Two Countries, One Lie. We're going to begin our series here with some of the injustices that happen. And in this episode, we're going to talk about courthouse fires. These courthouse fires were very important, and I want to discuss them with you about how they got away with injustices and doing our family members, our ancestors, an injustice. First of all, they started in 1846 and went to 1889. And there was 37 courthouse fires in the state of Texas. Now, these courthouse fires were not started by accident. They weren't just mishaps. They were caused by negligence and malice. And I'm going to show you some of the information that I got off the internet and how I acquired this information. Basically, if you go to thecourthousedirect.com, they have 4 parts. And on every part, you can read on these courthouse fires. And basically what it states in these documents here online is that these courthouse fires were tracking records such as property records, vital records, and probate documents. Well, in order for these injustices to have occurred, the Anglos knew one thing had to happen. They knew they had to burn the records. And what had happened was the people that were in charge of those courthouses in that time allowed those fires to continue. I don't know about you, but 37 courthouse fires doesn't seem like an accident to me. That seems like it was done on purpose. But there's one thing that those people that were in charge of those courthouses failed to understand. And I'm going to show it to you right now. Excuse me. That word right there is fiduciary. The people who ran those courthouses had the fiduciary responsibility to make sure that those courthouses did not lose those records. They had an obligation to the state of Texas and to all of the citizens in the state of Texas to make sure those courthouse documents did not get lost or destroyed. By having 37 courthouse fires, they were able to destroy all the documents of who owned what land, when, who was related to who from land grants, and who killed who. By destroying those documents, they were able to do something to refresh the slate and start with a clean slate. And that was retitle all of the properties. With the records being destroyed from the past, they were able to perform chicanery and commit these injustices within the courthouse so it looks legal by redocumenting all of the old properties with new owners, and they were able to come up and say, this is my title, I own this land. Well, I don't know about you, but 37 courthouse fires? I smell arson. That's not an accident. What I'm trying to prove here is that these fires were definitely caused, and officials definitely turned their heads and watched those buildings burn with the knowledge that they could get away with retitling. And this is an important step in starting to explain the injustices as we go on in our episodes. We're going to talk more, and the next one's going to be Bourlan and Miller Commission. There is another example of where courthouse documents got destroyed. And we're going to talk about that next. And I'm going to have my father, Jose Sierra, come up and explain to you the Bourlan and Miller Commission. Okay, go.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Jose Sierra, along with my son, Bo Sierra. We're here talking to try to educate and unite the Tejanos of all the land grants, Spanish or Mexican. My son earlier was talking about courthouse fires. As he told you, there was 37 of them within a 43-year period. And he basically explained it and told you that the way it really was. That it was all done maliciously with the intent of stealing our lands. Of course, we can't prove that because they made it convenient by destroying all the original records. But because of that, there was other people that were crying foul. So around 1850, the governor at that time, Peter Bell, put a commission together. And it was called the Bourlan and Miller Commission. The document I'm holding here that you can't read is off of the internet. And it tells you the whole history of the Bourlan Commission report. And that is nothing more than information that was brought to Peter Bell about Mexican claimants. They claimed wrongdoing, they claimed stolen lands, they claimed they were shot and ran off the properties. He didn't know who was telling the truth. And he probably really didn't care, but he was forced to do something because these Mexicans were starting to get to be a problem with their complaints. So he brought Bourlan and Miller around and he discussed with them he needed somebody to investigate if in fact these claims were true. And it was called the Bourlan Miller Commission. So they went around and they were digging up facts about the land of all Tejanos in their land grants. And what they found, and again, I'm not going to go through this whole document. There's so much information that you probably should be reading on the web. You'll find it very easily. Trust me, it's out there. That you'll see, you'll start to put this together in your own mind that our ancestors didn't have a chance. What happens is he sent these two men out to basically find out the truth and then report back to him. And that, evidently, after that, they would take that information and they would give it to the legislation of Texas to see if they could do anything to straighten it out. What happened is they found out the truth. The majority of the claims were true. And when they discovered that these claims of land theft, chicanery, whatever it was called, were starting to be put together, they felt that they had to do their duty to the governor and go back and tell him the truth. And the truth was that the majority of these claims were true. That the Mexicans, Tejanos, were basically cheated out of their lands, driven off their lands, forced off their lands, tricked off their lands, whatever you want to call it, or even squatted off their lands. So they went back and they brought all this information, but unfortunately on the way back, just as these courthouse fires happened, mysteriously the boat sunk that had all of the documents, and they had originals. They had original land grants. They had just collected from the Mexican Tejano owners, and they had documents that proved that they owned that land. And all of those documents were lost in that destruction of the ship. The riverboat sunk to the bottom, and all the documents were lost. It took years and years and years for them to either recover some of those or to bring them back to the rightful owners. And probably not everybody recovered their original or their grant claims. So it was another episode in the Tejanos who were trying to get justice. The year was about 1850. You can read on the web, just type in Bourlan and Miller Commission, and you'll get an understanding of how the deck was stacked against our people. They didn't have a chance because of the corruptness and because of the prejudice against them. That's the real truth that you're not going to read in those books. But some of them do tell you that it was kind of hard and bad on the Tejanos, but they don't really tell you the real story. The real story of corruption, greed, murder, all those things went along and with those poor people trying to get justice for their claims. So in this Bourlan and Miller Commission, not much came good for the Tejanos at the end. They sent it forward to the legislation of Texas, and basically nothing was done, or very little. So our Tejano brothers and sisters in the 1850s to 1860s were dealt a big blow, because not only did they have their basic stories told, but the documents were also handed over to Bourlan and Miller, and like in the courthouse fires, they were destroyed too in a riverboat sinking. You could say it was another coincidence. There's a lot of these coincidences in Texas in these years. Most of them were always against our people. You can draw your own conclusion, but that's how it really was. But the bottom line is, we're going to go into the next episode in a few more minutes here, and we're going to show you how all of this frustration and all of this cheating of our people's lands came into a bigger problem because our people were fighting back and they wanted justice. They wanted somebody to acknowledge that their land was illegally taken from them, so they went and they complained so much that what they would develop would be the what is it called? I forgot. The General Claims Commission. I'm sorry, I went brain dead there for a minute. General Claims Commission of 1868. We'll get in that in another chapter of this session, and we'll tell you more about that. But we want to thank you. But right now, these courthouse fires, these courthouse fires and the Bourlan and Miller Commission report are more important than you think. We just got done talking to an attorney, and because of this coincidence of all these fires and all of these riverboat sinkings that stopped our people from getting what we call justice in this country, it may be relevant in a court today to show that because of the prejudice against them, maybe the Congress can get involved and remove the statute of limitation and allow us to have our day in court today. So we'll keep talking about this. Thanks for listening. Good. Hello, welcome back to Two Countries, One Lie. Educate and unite, that's our motto. Welcome back. I'm Jose Sierra Jr. and along with my son Bo Sierra and my granddaughter Camilla Sierra, we're here to try to teach you a little bit more about what our ancestors had the problems with and had to fight with. Today's subject is manifest destiny. That's one of my favorite subjects. Only because manifest destiny is what set the table for the white man to do whatever he wanted and get away with it. Because of this man, John O'Sullivan, he was a writer and an editor, he wrote the Manifest Destiny. I'm not gonna get into what this guy was all about. We all know these people were racist, they were all prejudiced, and they felt they had a God-given right to take that land away from anybody other than another white man. It was taken if you were a person of color. If you were black, Hispanic, that land, you had no right to that land. They did. Manifest Destiny spread for years. Unfortunately, these people that had the Manifest Destiny doctrine, there was other people in this country that knew that was wrong. But it didn't stop these people from, at that point in time in history, to use it against Tejanos, your ancestors and mine. What you see is history, 1845, 1855, Manifest Destiny was printed in papers that whites read, Anglos read, and their whole purpose was to eradicate the Spanish, Mexicans, and Indians from the land from coast to coast. Because in those days, they had laws written where only white men could own the lands. God forbid that a Mexican owned land, oh my God. They didn't know how to deal with that other than bring out their 6 guns and try to shoot you way out of it. But this era was the culmination to build this era. And this is the 1865 Jim Crow laws. They were born about that period in history. And Jim Crow's, everybody recognizes Jim Crow's laws primarily against blacks, but they were also against our brothers and sisters, Hispanics, Tejanos. Unfortunately, you were a person of color just like the black man, and you didn't reserve the right to own land in their eyes. Why was this important? Why are we bringing this to you? Because we're showing that this history is all laced with prejudice, with all types of lawlessness, and it was primarily aimed at us, and it was aimed at the blacks. So from this point in history, I can tell you we were on the losing end of anything that was going to be beneficial for our people, because the Anglos didn't want us around. This Jim Crow law is interesting because there was a man that actually printed an article, and he had 7 rules or laws for the white man to tell the black man or Hispanic what to do and what not to do. One of the primary laws was, do not ever question the white man or else. This can be found in the the Ferris Education, Ferris State University in Michigan. They have actually a museum there of this whole era, and they show you signs and black only, colored only, white only, or they have signs that tell you what the era looked like in those days. When you walked into a store, they would have a sign that said no dogs, no Negroes, no Mexicans allowed. So I want to read to you these 7 laws. I've got them on the internet here. And I want to tell you, his name was Stetson Kennedy. He's the author of the Jim Crow Guide of 1990. Or it was written in 1990. He offered these simple rules that blacks and Hispanics were supposed to observe in those times. Rule number 1, never assert or even insinuate that a white person is lying. Never impute dishonorable intentions to a white person. That's number 2. Number 3, never suggest that a white person is from an inferior class. Number 4, never lay claim to or overwhelmingly demonstrate superior knowledge or intelligence towards a white man. Number 5, never curse at a white man or a white lady. Number 6, never laugh derisively at a white person. And number 7, never comment upon the appearance of a white female. A lot of people think those rules were just for blacks. Those rules were for anybody of color. That museum in Michigan, the Ferris Museum, Ferris State University Museum, they will show you those artifacts of the history in the past days that are now banned. They're not allowed in certain stores. The problem with these rules is there's unwritten rules that still exist today. And that's where we're having our issues. We are still facing the same kind of discrimination in our lifestyle today, even though it's the year 2016, but these are unwritten rules now. Whereas in the old days, it was bold. They just put it out there and they told you this is the way it is. Now they don't tell you that because they tell you have rights, but in reality, it's still the same way. We can't get justice, we're not allowed to do certain things, and we still can't live in certain places. Such is the black man's life, such is the Hispanic life or the Tejanos' life. That's not good enough for today. That's still wrong. But unfortunately, it is what it is, and it is the way it is. So I wanted to show you this because, again, this is more evidence of the wrongdoing towards our brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, grandfathers and grandmothers who had to fight through all this adversity. I don't know how you feel about it, but it doesn't make me feel happy to know that we lost our land and nobody cared. Yeah, I'm sure we fought hard for certain times in certain eras, and we did the best we could. Our people were very limited. Unfortunately, the deck was stacked against them. What's going to happen is we're going to find all of this adversity still there, but it's not being told to you. It's all unwritten. Prejudices are still out there, and if we're going to get justice for these land grants, we need to figure this out and fight this adversity and bring it all to the light to show them this is the way it really was. I want to thank you for coming for this segment. We're going to do another segment here following this one. So before I go, here's my son Bo Sierra, and we'll talk to you in the next segment.
Okay, I just wanted to speak about our ancestors in this era that they had to go through. Basically, they were facing the Anglos with a gun in their face, being told to leave with what's on your back and don't come back. I find this highly disturbing. All this kind of points to that being evident that that's really how it happened. And those poor people were forced to leave their land with nothing, just the clothes on their back. And it's kind of unfortunate that things were done in that manner, but again, it makes me very upset to know that they were forced to make do with what they had on their back and go. That is why we must continue to fight. What those actions that happened in the past, no, that's not right at all. It's not fair. So as we continue to do these episodes, we're going to expose the truth of the past on how our ancestors were cheated out of their land, and we're going to continue to build our case in how we're still being cheated even in today. Again, this is one episode of Two Countries, One Lie, and we will have a next episode hopefully very shortly. Thank you.